Throughout history, the most powerful individuals and institutions have relied on one crucial element to maintain their dominance: control over the masses. But this control is rarely achieved through direct force alone. Instead, it operates subtly, shaping public perception, guiding societal norms, and manipulating behavior in ways that most people never question. The idea that we live in a free and autonomous society is one of the greatest illusions ever crafted.
While we believe our thoughts, opinions, and choices are our own, they are often the result of sophisticated strategies designed to influence us without our awareness. From the media we consume to the political systems we trust, from the fears we internalize to the distractions that keep us occupied, mass manipulation is deeply embedded in our daily lives. This video will explore the hidden strategies that the powerful use to shape reality itself. We will break down the mechanisms of psychological influence, examine historical and modern examples of mass control, and uncover the tactics used by elites to maintain their position at the top. The question is, how much of what you believe is truly yours? The psychology of influence. At the heart of mass control lies a fundamental truth about human nature. People are not as independent in their thinking as they believe. Human psychology is deeply rooted in social conformity, emotional influence, and cognitive biases that make manipulation not just possible, but inevitable. Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, understood this better than most. By applying the principles of psychology to mass communication, he pioneered the field of propaganda, later rebranded as public relations. His work demonstrated that people do not make rational choices. They are driven by emotion, subconscious desires, and the influence of authority figures. Bernays successfully convinced the American public that cigarettes were a symbol of female empowerment, that bacon and eggs were the ideal breakfast, and that war could be marketed as a noble cause. His legacy lives on in the way corporations, politicians, and media outlets shape public perception today. The human mind craves certainty, order, and belonging. This makes it susceptible to groupthink, the psychological phenomenon in which individuals adopt the opinions of the majority, even when they are false or irrational. The fear of isolation leads people to conform, allowing power structures to establish narratives that go largely unchallenged. When a belief is repeated often enough, it transforms into an unquestioned truth, regardless of its validity. The most effective form of control is not brute force, but the ability to shape the limits of what people perceive as possible. By carefully curating the information available, those in power do not need to suppress alternative views. They simply make them seem ridiculous, extreme, or unthinkable. Historical examples of mass manipulation. History offers countless examples of societies falling under the spell of mass manipulation. Those in control have always understood that fear, distraction, and misinformation are more effective than outright oppression. In the 20th century, totalitarian regimes mastered the art of propaganda. The Nazi Party, under Joseph Goebbels, relied on a simple principle: repeat a lie often enough, and it becomes the truth. By controlling newspapers, films, and radio broadcasts, the regime turned entire populations against perceived enemies, justifying atrocities under the guise of nationalism and security. Yet, such tactics were not limited to authoritarian states. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union used psychological operations to control public perception. The American government, for example, engaged in Operation Mockingbird, where journalists were recruited by intelligence agencies to influence media narratives. Simultaneously, Hollywood films were shaped to promote pro-war and anti-communist sentiments, ensuring that the population aligned with government interests without needing explicit coercion. But mass control does not always require government intervention. In the modern era, multinational corporations have taken the place of state propaganda machines. Advertisers manipulate consumer desires, convincing people that their self-worth is tied to material possessions. The myth of the self-made individual, perpetuated through media and business culture, serves to obscure the structural inequalities that keep power concentrated at the top. Mass manipulation does not operate through deception alone. It thrives in the creation of controlled opposition, giving the illusion of choice while ensuring that all paths lead to the same outcome. Whether in politics, economics, or ideology, the most effective way to control a population is not to eliminate dissent, but to absorb it into a system that never truly threatens the status quo. From ancient rulers who used religion to justify divine authority to modern corporations that engineer desire through targeted advertising, the methods of mass control have remained remarkably consistent. What changes is the technology and sophistication of these strategies, making them harder to detect and even harder to resist. Control of information and media. To control a society, one must control its perception of reality. In an age where information is abundant, the illusion of choice becomes a powerful tool for manipulation. The modern world presents a paradox. People have access to more information than ever before, yet their understanding of reality is often more controlled, not less. Noam Chomsky's concept of manufacturing consent outlines how mass media does not merely report events but frames them in ways that serve elite interests. Information is filtered through corporate ownership, political alliances, and economic incentives, ensuring that the narratives presented to the public reinforce the power structures already in place. News outlets do not need to fabricate lies. They only need to decide which stories are told, how they are framed, and which voices are amplified or silenced. This control is not just limited to traditional media. Social media platforms have transformed into tools of surveillance and behavioral control. Algorithms do not merely respond to user interests, they shape them. Every curated news feed, every trending topic, and every viral controversy is not an organic reflection of society, but a carefully designed mechanism that rewards conformity and punishes deviation. By controlling what information reaches the masses and in what form, those in power subtly dictate what is perceived as important, real, or worth debating. A population that believes itself to be well-informed, while unknowingly consuming curated distortions of reality, is easier to control than one that is overtly censored. True power lies not in preventing access to information, but in making sure that even when the truth is exposed, it appears insignificant, laughable, or dangerous. Fear as a tool of control. Fear has always been the most effective means of ensuring obedience. A fearful population does not ask questions, does not rebel, and does not seek alternatives. It clings to authority as a source of protection, even when that same authority is the very architect of its suffering. Political systems thrive on the strategic use of fear. Wars are justified by the presence of external threats, real or imagined. Governments expand their powers under the pretext of security, passing laws that would be unacceptable under normal circumstances. When a population is kept in a constant state of anxiety, whether through economic uncertainty, health crises, or ideological conflicts, it becomes incapable of rational resistance. The psychological mechanism behind this is simple. Fear triggers a survival instinct, reducing complex thought to binary choices: us versus them, safety versus chaos, submission versus destruction. Those who control the narrative of fear control the responses to it. If people believe that their security depends on compliance, they will not only accept control but demand it. Fear also serves to divide. A society at war with itself, whether through racial, political, or ideological conflict, is one that cannot unite against its true oppressors. The more people fear each other, the less they see the structures that manipulate them from above. The illusion of choice. One of the most deceptive forms of control is the appearance of freedom. People do not rebel when they believe they are making their own choices, even if every choice is an illusion. In politics, the controlled opposition ensures that no matter which party is in power, the interests of the elite remain protected. In economics, consumer culture convinces people that personal fulfillment can be bought, ensuring that they remain too preoccupied with material pursuits to challenge the deeper structures of inequality. Democratic systems often serve as an example of this illusion. Political parties present themselves as opposing forces, yet their policies, when examined closely, often serve the same financial and corporate interests. Elections become less about meaningful change and more about maintaining the appearance of participation. A population that believes it has a voice does not realize when its voice is irrelevant. Capitalism itself is built on a similar illusion. The idea of personal success, framed as an individual's ability to work hard and prosper, ignores the systemic barriers that keep wealth concentrated at the top. The myth of meritocracy ensures that people blame themselves for their failures rather than questioning the structures that limit them. By presenting controlled alternatives, different brands, different politicians, different lifestyles, Society maintains the illusion of diversity while ensuring that the foundational systems of power remain untouched. Entertainment as a distraction. The Roman Empire perfected the strategy of bread and circuses, recognizing that as long as people were fed and entertained, they would not concern themselves with politics or oppression. Modern society has taken this principle to new heights. Entertainment is not merely a diversion, it is a means of shaping perception, values, and priorities. Mass entertainment, from sports to reality television, serves as a tool for emotional investment in trivial matters while deeper issues remain unexamined. Celebrities replace philosophers, and gossip replaces discourse. Popular culture ensures that intellectual engagement is seen as elitist or irrelevant, while mindless distractions are celebrated as normal. This is not to say that entertainment itself is inherently evil, but rather that its omnipresence serves a function: to prevent self-awareness, to fill the void that might otherwise be occupied by critical thought, and to ensure that dissatisfaction is directed toward fictional narratives rather than real-world injustices. Even rebellion is commodified. Countercultures that begin as genuine resistance are quickly absorbed into the mainstream, transformed into marketable trends, and stripped of their radical potential. The system does not crush dissent, it profits from it. Social engineering and psychological operations, PSYOPs. Social engineering is the art of influencing human behavior on a mass scale, and it has been refined to a science. Governments and intelligence agencies have long used psychological operations, PSYOPs, to shape public opinion, not through brute force, but through carefully crafted perception management. One of the most well-documented examples is the CIA's MKUltra project, which explored ways to control minds through drugs, hypnosis, and psychological manipulation. While such programs were officially discontinued, their legacy lives on in the sophisticated psychological tactics used by media, advertising, and political campaigns. Mass movements, revolutions, and cultural shifts are often not as organic as they appear. Social trends can be engineered, protests can be guided toward predetermined outcomes, and ideological movements can be co-opted before they ever pose a genuine threat to the establishment. When a population believes it is resisting oppression while unknowingly serving the interests of the powerful, control becomes nearly absolute. The most sophisticated form of mass manipulation is one that convinces people they are acting freely while ensuring that every action benefits the system itself. A population that cannot distinguish between genuine autonomy and controlled behavior is a population that will never seek to break free. AI, big data and surveillance capitalism. As technology advances, so too does the ability to control and manipulate the masses. The tools of power have evolved beyond propaganda and censorship. In the digital age, mass manipulation is no longer about limiting access to information. It is about drowning people in an ocean of carefully curated data, ensuring that their thoughts and behaviors are shaped without them ever realizing it. The rise of artificial intelligence and big data has transformed manipulation into a precise science. Every search query, every purchase, every social media interaction is recorded, analyzed, and used to build a psychological profile. These profiles allow corporations, governments, and intelligence agencies to predict behavior, influence decisions, and engineer social outcomes with an efficiency that was once unimaginable. Surveillance capitalism, as described by Shoshana Zuboff, is not merely about watching people, it is about shaping them. Algorithms do not simply reflect reality, they create it. They determine what information is shown, what narratives gain traction, and what ideas fade into obscurity. The world is no longer experienced directly but through a digital filter designed by unseen forces. More insidiously, the data collected on individuals does not just predict behavior, it modifies it. Recommendation systems shape opinions. Behavioral nudges guide actions. Social credit systems, already implemented in some parts of the world, ensure compliance by tying digital behavior to real-world consequences. When economic opportunities, travel freedom, or even basic social privileges are linked to algorithmic approval, dissent becomes not just dangerous, but nearly impossible. The most terrifying aspect of this digital control is that it does not require force. People willingly submit, trading their privacy for convenience, their independence for comfort. The more a society embraces the digital, the more it becomes entangled in a web of invisible control mechanisms from which escape becomes increasingly difficult. The metaverse and digital control. The future of mass manipulation may not lie in the physical world at all. The rise of virtual spaces, from social media to the emerging metaverse, signals a shift in how reality itself is experienced. As more aspects of human life move online, control over digital environments will mean control over perception itself. The metaverse, in theory, offers limitless freedom, a space where individuals can craft their own identities, explore new possibilities, and break free from real-world constraints. Yet, in practice, it is being built by the same corporations and institutions that control the current digital landscape. The rules of these virtual worlds will not be determined democratically but will be coded into existence by the powerful. The architecture of the metaverse will dictate what can and cannot be done, what is seen and what is hidden, what is rewarded and what is punished. More than just a form of entertainment, a fully realized digital world offers the ultimate distraction, a hyper-immersive experience that makes real-world suffering, injustice, and control feel increasingly irrelevant. If the masses can be entertained indefinitely, if they can live fulfilling lives in virtual realities where they feel powerful and free, why would they seek to change anything in the real world? The shift toward digital existence also brings with it a more fundamental philosophical question. What happens when reality itself becomes subjective? If people spend more time in artificial worlds than in the real one, the ability to shape consensus reality becomes absolute. The truth will no longer be something to be debated or discovered. It will be something that is programmed, modified, and updated like software. The next phase of psychological warfare. As manipulation techniques become more advanced, the distinction between real and artificial thought will blur. The next frontier of control is not just external, it is internal. Neuromarketing, brain-computer interfaces, and the emerging field of neurotechnology hint at a future where influence bypasses traditional media and enters the mind directly. Already, experiments are being conducted on brainwave analysis, neural implants, and subconscious suggestion. The more neuroscience advances, the more precise the methods of control become. Persuasion will no longer rely on logic, fear, or even media saturation. It will operate at the level of thought itself, shaping desires before they even reach conscious awareness. In a world where emotions, preferences, and beliefs can be subtly adjusted by external forces, free will becomes an illusion crafted by those who understand the mechanisms of the mind. The question is no longer whether mass manipulation exists. It is whether resistance to it will remain possible. If control extends beyond media, beyond education, beyond even digital surveillance, and reaches into the very structure of human cognition, the concept of autonomy itself may become obsolete. The greatest trick of mass manipulation is convincing people that they are free while ensuring that every thought, belief, and action is shaped by unseen forces. Throughout history, the powerful have refined their techniques, moving from brute force to psychological conditioning, from propaganda to digital control, from external coercion to internalized compliance. Each new method becomes more subtle, more effective, and more difficult to resist. If information can be controlled, perception can be controlled. If perception can be controlled, reality itself can be rewritten. A world shaped by mass manipulation is not one where people are enslaved by chains, but one where they no longer recognize the need to break free. They do not seek revolution because they do not perceive their own captivity. They do not resist because they do not see the mechanisms of control that shape their every decision. But no system of control is absolute. The most powerful tool against manipulation is awareness, the ability to see beyond the constructed narratives, to question the illusions, and to reclaim independent thought. True resistance begins not with rebellion against external forces, but with the refusal to accept false realities. It requires the discipline to seek knowledge beyond curated media, the courage to challenge deeply ingrained beliefs, and the willingness to think critically even when it is inconvenient. The question is not whether mass manipulation exists. It is whether people will recognize it, confront it, and take back the power that has been systematically stripped away. The future is not predetermined. It is shaped by those who refuse to be controlled.